Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. What does it mean to speak as a leader? Well, we know that great leaders often exhibit things like clarity, confidence, and charisma when they speak. But beyond these well-known traits, what can we do to not only improve on these skills, but hone in on what makes us unique in our authentic authority? Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Nausheen I, Chen, a 3-time TEDx speaker and renowned public speaking coach. We'll dive into the importance of honing your natural strengths, which combats the fact that 90% of public speaking anxiety stems from poor preparation.
I very often get clients who are so painfully aware of their opportunity areas that they completely neglect the fact that they might have natural strengths that they've developed over time, that if they can just lean into, they can become exceptional in those areas.
We'll also discuss how public speaking can boost your brand and business.
And it's really that act of stepping into those shoes and realizing that your words have power. You cannot be invisible anymore, so you have to use your words and deliver them in a way that makes the most impact.
Further, public speaking skills increase annual salaries by 10% and are essential for career growth. So we'll look into how companies can support their employees in becoming confident speakers.
Now, companies actually hire employees that have some kind of presence that they can look up and say, oh yeah, this person seems to be an expert in this field. They've taken the time to become visible and establish their authority and credibility.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the DesignRush Podcast for more conversations with industry leaders. Let's get into it. Nausheen, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. We are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Bianca. It's my pleasure, and I was looking forward to this conversation all week, so really excited.
Same. Yeah, definitely same. Okay, so Nausheen, I'd like to start our conversation today just by discussing, your professional career a little bit more. Now, I know that you've delivered like 3 TEDx talks, each with its own, unique style and messaging. So I wonder if you could share what's the key message that you would tell your audience or, that really summarizes these speeches that you've given.
The first TEDx talk that I did was very personal. And at that point, I was just transitioning into this role of becoming a public speaking coach. So the first one, as it is with a lot of people's first TED Talks or TEDx Talks, is the first one is usually very personal and it's a culmination of everything that you've been keeping inside and are just waiting to tell the world and unveil. So the first one was really just about finding your true voice. And I would say that is the one thing that resonates across all the talks that I do, all the events that I do, everything I stand for. The second and the third were explorations of different aspects of finding your own voice. The second one was more about storytelling, and the third one was more about confidence. What comes first, action or the confidence behind that action. So finding your true voice and having the courage to express it and share it with the world, that would be the underlying message in everything I do.
I think that is such a hard thing for most people to do, to be honest with you. I think it's really hard. You have to really, really know yourself, I think, to be able to do that and be super comfortable with who you are as a person, right? Okay, so Nausheen, I know in one of your recent podcasts with Jason Pfeiffer, he's the editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur Magazine, for anybody that might not know. He actually said something that really, really struck a chord with me personally. And it was something to the effect of, if you're building your career right, you're putting yourself into situations that you're not fully prepared for, and you then have to rise to the occasion. So what that means to me is that this is obviously a conversation about feeling, imposter syndrome, right? And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with to some degree or another. So my question is, Nausheen, how can speaking as a leader help to combat these self-imposed ideas of not really feeling worthy of the career positions that we're put in?
And this is such a great question for a lot of people who find themselves in positions of power. Either they've been promoted to a more visible spot in their company, or maybe they're entrepreneurs and founders who realize that now they need to build their brand and they need to be more visible.
Yeah.
And it's really that act of stepping into those shoes and realizing that your words have power. You cannot be invisible anymore, so you have to use your words and deliver them in a way that makes the most impact. It's that realization that can be nerve-wracking for a lot of people. Everyone doesn't love the spotlight. Everyone doesn't love it when people are looking at them and expecting them to deliver. And a lot of people have this chaos in their brains where they can't always express and articulate their ideas in the best possible way. So it's that transition, that stepping up to that position of power, or stepping up to be more intentional about your personal brand, that is uncomfortable but so needed. That's where I come in terms of helping people express their ideas in the best way, in the most powerful way, in the most articulate way. And it's, of course, a period of growth and discomfort, but it leads to such beautiful things when you can really express yourself with comfort and ease and make it seem effortless, and at the same time build your thought leadership and build your authority every time that you speak.
I just need to ask, Nausheen, is there like a certain timeline that it takes for someone to be able to really fully embrace themselves in that way? What's like the average timeline for people to really start getting into finding their voice? I mean, is there like a standard, or is it different for everybody?
There's so many factors at play. First, it's about what is your starting point? Are you the kind of person who freezes when they're on stage or in the spotlight? Or are you the kind of person who's fairly confident and perhaps extroverted and who has been talkative most of their lives? Are you the kind of person who finds it easy to express ideas in an improvised way? Or do you work better when you have a script or notes that you've prepared beforehand? So what's the baseline? In general, based on experimentation and research, I realized that a few months of intense, concentrated effort will pay huge dividends. You can really exponentially change the way that you're showing up. You can exponentially increase the impact that you're making if you can work on your speaking skills for about 8 to 12 weeks. So it doesn't really take that long. It's just about intentionality and commitment.
Okay, 8 to 12 weeks does not sound like a very long time. I think that, at the end of the day, it has such a reward at the end that I think putting in that effort is definitely worth it. I even know for myself, I was put onto this podcast even, and it's been a journey trying to find my voice. And it's I have to say, we're only on our 48th episode right now. And for the things that I've learned in these last episodes or throughout this time has been insane. And it is really just putting in that work. Okay. So on that note, Nausheen, let's talk a little bit more about what it actually means to speak as a leader. Now, I know that great leaders often exhibit things like clarity and confidence and charisma when they speak. But beyond these like well-known traits, what are some of the lesser discussed qualities that you believe really are super important for a leader's communication style?
Yeah, and I think about this and I do research on this and I obsess over it. So it's exactly the kind of thing that really excites me to talk about. And I've boiled it down to 3 components, 3 things that really show whether or not you're speaking as a thought leader, speaking as an authority, or speaking as a magnetic presence. It's, of course, about your message, how concise and clear and engaging and relatable the message is. It's about how you're delivering the message, because you can have the best words, But if you're delivering them in a monotone, if you're not expressing anything, if you're not touching people emotionally, then the words are going to be lost and wasted. And the third piece is possibly the most neglected, which is that inner confidence and inner comfort and ease. And I know that through firsthand experience, because for the longest time, I found it fairly easy to project that confidence without feeling that inner confidence, without really feeling that conviction. So I would go on stage and do this talk or presentation, get applause. People would tell me later, wow, you're so confident. And in my head, I would just think, yeah, I can project it. You perceive me as confident, but I'm not really confident. So that third piece is essential. Otherwise, you're just putting on a show, which is also entirely possible, but not something I would recommend. So your message, how you're delivering it, and what is that inner conviction and inner confidence that you're feeling and projecting.
But I have to ask though, and this is something that I've done myself actually, is that I've often like faked it until I made it in a way. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like basically, like you say, putting on sort of a show of confidence until I start to actually feel confident. So is there something about that that can still, be applied for some people that are trying to learn how to speak more confidently?
I recommend doing the inner confidence work alongside, because just like you're talking about, it's entirely possible to put on a show. You can put on a mask. And I work with clients who tell me, Nausheen, I've been putting on this mask forever and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of just pretending to be confident because on the inside, I feel awful. I don't feel confident. I don't feel like I'm worth anything. And what happens is eventually it actually becomes a vicious cycle, because the more you fake something, the worse you feel afterwards. You start telling yourself, I can only ever fake it. I'm never going to be the real thing. So it has a detrimental effect. And that's where I feel that it's just not worth it to put on that show, even though it is possible. It's really important to address any kind of blocks that you might have on the inside when it comes to that missing piece of confidence or self-esteem.
So Nausheen, in that case then, how can, aspiring speakers work on these types of traits?
We work on what I call the outer piece and then the inner piece of it. So the outer piece is what I call the speaker's toolkit, working on your voice, working on your energy and your body language. If you look at any TEDx talk that you might love, you'll realize that the speaker is playing with their voice. They're changing up the pitch, they're changing up the pacing, they're adding in pauses, they're enunciating, they're playing with their energy. So they're showing up with a specific energy and varying that as well. They're not always up here, but they're also not always down here. And they're playing with their body language. They're incorporating movement into the way that they show up, whether it's in person or online. So those are the outer characteristics, the toolkit that you can work on. And then you work on the inner confidence, where we figure out, well, how do you feel before you step on that stage? How nervous are you? Are you letting the nerves take over? On some level, everyone's nervous, even the most experienced speakers. But it's what you do with the nerves, that's what matters. How are you feeling afterwards? Do you feel that you're getting the right kind of response from people? Are you getting the engagement and the results that you're looking for? So working on that inner piece, along with developing a strong speaker's toolkit, that's what I've seen to be the most effective way of becoming more impactful when you speak.
Okay. So of course, Nausheen, we know that adaptability is a very important factor as well, especially in a leader's communication style. Now, can you maybe give us an example or someone that you think of when you think of someone that exemplifies this trait exceptionally well? Who would that be?
I don't have specific role models, but what I love doing is learning specific things that speakers do really well. So Simon Sinek is someone who portrays this quiet confidence really well. And I often bring him up as an example with some of my clients who are introverts, who don't want to be the loudest voice in the room, who don't want to be the next Tony Robbins, but they do want to portray authority and confidence. On the other hand, someone like Tony Robbins or Gary Vee could be an example of someone who knows how to use that energy, who knows how to really rile the crowd up in a positive way and get positive engagement from them. Show them that I'm not going to let you be lazy here. I want you to engage. I want you to step up that energy, step up that engagement. So the beauty of it is being able to look at different styles, at different speakers who bring different strengths and skill sets. And how do we learn from that? That's one of the first things I tell all my clients to do is stop being passive consumers of YouTube, for example, and peel back the curtain. Look at what are the tools that these speakers are using to create that impression that you have now in your mind. And that's where you're going to start becoming more and more intentional with the way that you speak and show up.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds to me a lot like, again, getting to know yourself and knowing what your strengths are and knowing who you are as a person and being able to really authentically portray yourself, right? Or be yourself, rather. So I wonder, in that sense as well, how do you go about helping people identify what their strengths are to then enhance them to speak as a leader, the type of leader that they are authentically themselves?
I love that you asked this because I very often get clients who are so painfully aware of their opportunity areas that they completely neglect the fact that they might have natural strengths that they've developed over time, that if they can just lean into, they can become exceptional in those areas. So I love that you were starting first with the strengths piece of it. It actually requires a bit of training. I start telling my clients from the first session that when we are reviewing your speaking exercises, when we are reviewing your podcasts or your keynotes, the very first thing I want to discuss is, what did you do well? What are you already doing well that we can then become more intentional about? And it varies, but there's so much that people bring to the table without being aware of it. It could be a natural charisma. It could be that someone is very clear in the way that they enunciate and they've developed that strength themselves over time. It could be that someone's really great at using specific gestures that marry their content with the gesture that they're making. So it's about becoming more intentional and watching back videos of yourself speaking, which is very hard and cringy for a lot of people, including me. But it brings so many insights.
I have to say, I hate watching myself. I do watch them, of course. I have to, but it's if I could avoid it, I would. To be honest, it's just very cringy. But yes, I agree. It's very important to do that for sure. Okay, so I have another question as well on this topic, which is, I know that empathy and being able to genuinely connect with people on a really deep level, even if it is just on a podcast or on a video or, in person, whatever the case may be, is extremely important as well. And you kind of are able to then take a person or an audience on that journey with you. So I wonder, how can leaders enhance this during their public speaking?
Yeah, the very first step is to think of any instance of you speaking on stage or on camera as a conversation, not as a one-way lecture. That is the first mistake that I see a lot of people make, where they're just into presenting their slides or giving an interview where it's just them speaking at the person or speaking at the audience. The moment you flip it and you turn it into a conversation, you automatically make the audience feel so much more valued and heard. You're not there to just present the slides. You are there to help the audience learn something, achieve something, get motivated to do something. That one switch is enough for you to start thinking about how to become more engaging, ask more questions, for example. Share examples that are relevant to the audience versus examples that might be not relevant to them. So if you can make that switch and stop thinking of anything, any form of communication as one way, and think of how you can open up that door to let the audience engage with you, that's a great first step there in terms of becoming more engaging as a speaker, becoming more empathetic, and adding that humanity back into the way that you speak.
I have to say, I absolutely love that. And it's actually got my cogs working now on like how we can do that, or I can even do that with our very own podcast as well. And sort of, but actually on that note, how do you then, if say for instance with something like this, I know a lot of times, you know, when we're speaking on video and stuff, it can kind of start feeling a bit monologue-y. So what would your tips be for people that are running a podcast, something similar to this, to then create like an engaging sort of video that the audience that is watching it can feel like they're part of it as well?
Yeah, so there are multiple things that you can do. The first one is to make the way that you speak very conversational and informal. Mm-hmm. There are people that prep scripts for their videos, for example, and it just sounds like they're reciting something. They're reading something off of a script that they've written, or worse, a script that ChatGPT has written for them. So the first step is to actually say things that you are likely to say in person in a real conversation. Use simple vocabulary, short sentences, words, sounds that you're likely to make, like, okay, interesting. Things like that make it more of a conversation. The second step is to intentionally ask people questions. This is interesting when there is no audience immediately, like for this podcast or when you're creating a video, but it doesn't mean that you can't ask questions that people can answer in their own heads. You can set up a scenario. Imagine that you're on stage. How do you feel? You're probably feeling nervous, right? Is that what you're imagining? So take people there. It requires extra effort on your part to really visualize what people are going to think and carry on the conversation as if they have responded to you, as if you're in that live setting with them sitting in front of you and nodding their heads. And asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask people things that they can then ask themselves. And that's what's going to help create that back and forth. And you can even take it a step further on YouTube, for example, where people actually say, what do you think? Do you have an answer for this? Tell me in the comments. That's what they're doing. They're creating a space for people to interact with them very intentionally.
Yes. Okay. So on the topic of video content, I know that everyone is using it to drive engagement on social media and stuff like that. So how can a knowledgeable but really shy person authentically then share their expertise without sounding or seeming boring? What steps can they take to then confidently present themselves as a thought leader in their field? I mean, surely you've come across someone like this. And in that case, what tips did you give them?
Yeah, all the time. I have a lot of clients who are introverted, who hate being in the spotlight, who hate being on camera. And there are two things that I work with them on. One is equipping them with that speaker's toolkit that we talked about so that they understand what a powerful speaker does in terms of using their voice, their energy, their body language, expressions, and presence. So that's more of a training on the tools. But then how do they actually apply the tools so that they remain authentic, but are still using the tools that they can then use to become more impactful? And there, it might be worthwhile to challenge the definition of authenticity. For example, maybe you're a very soft-spoken person in real life. That's great. It works well in one-on-one settings. Is it possible to be soft-spoken when you're on stage or on camera? To an extent, yes. But It's also important to make sure that you are heard, like literally heard and understood. Because if I start talking like this, maybe I'll talk like this in real life, but it's going to be so difficult for people to actually understand what I'm saying. It's weird. You make an extra effort to be what I call being yourself, but a little bit more of yourself, just amplified. The authenticity piece comes in where whatever you're amplifying has real roots. So if I sound excited, I'm just amplifying a feeling that I have already. I'm not faking excitement because people can tell. As soon as people understand that this particular medium, speaking on camera, speaking on stage, speaking to an audience, it requires a bit of amplification just so that people can relate to you easily. There are many times where I work with clients and they'll be talking to me about something they're very passionate about, their area of expertise, but they'll be talking about it in a monotone with a poker face and without using their body language. And I ask them, how do you feel about this subject? And they tell me, I love it. It's my life's work. And then I ask them, why am I not feeling it? I'm not sitting inside your brain. I can't tell that you're passionate about it. You have to make an effort to show it to me. So the best way to be authentic on camera and on stage is to amplify the feelings you already have in an intentional way so that you make it easy for people to access that.
So Nausheen, I really want to talk to you about how speaking actually enhances branding and scaling your business. I know that during my prep for this conversation today, I actually learned that it was something like 71% of people prefer learning about a brand through live presentations rather than, passive forms or like blog posts or something like that. Now, the research actually suggests that public speaking is a lot more effective in creating a memorable and engaging brand experience. So I'd like to explore, this impact of public speaking on personal branding and just, again, overall business growth now. So my first question is, how can leaders leverage public speaking to, again, amplify their personal brand and industry visibility, especially considering that techniques like storytelling and audience engagement, things that we've all just discussed, are proven to boost this sort of credibility and emotional connection with listeners?
The first step is realizing that just putting out written content is not going to create a rich three-dimensional or multi-dimensional image of you as a brand. That's the hard step. Where I've seen a lot of people just write content is the easiest thing to do, or easier than getting on camera, creating a video. It just sounds like so much more effort. So the first step is really convincing yourself that if you can do that podcast, do that live event, create a video, you are enhancing your brand in ways that you cannot imagine if you would just stick to words. And I can speak from experience here because when I first started posting on LinkedIn, for example, the first thing I did was just write posts. So just taking pictures and writing up stories or writing up posts. And that was fine. It got me to a certain stage. But then there was definitely a limit to what kind of impact I could make, how I could differentiate myself versus all the other public speaking coaches out there. It was only when one of my first clients, he said, Nausheen, I know you've done these TEDx talks and I can look them up on YouTube, but beyond that, I'm not able to find videos of you speaking, just speaking. And he said, as a client or as a potential client, I may not want to hire you if I can't see the way that you speak. And that was a light bulb moment. That's when I started creating videos on LinkedIn, and it just massively paid off because that's what got me attention, not just from potential clients, but also from companies, from industry leaders. I got invited by LinkedIn to be an official LinkedIn learning instructor. Companies like Twitch reached out to me to do workshops for them. And I would ask all of them, well, what did you hear about me, or why did you reach out to me? And they would all say, your videos, they're great. We really like them. We want you to create something like that for our team. We want you to create something like that for our platform. So creating videos or being more visible goes such a long way in helping and enriching your brand, and of course, growing your business. I have clients who show up on sales calls where they say that I already have a feel for who you are as a person because I've seen your videos. It doesn't seem like it's cold. It's very, very warm. It's very much like it's a familiar face, because it is. They have seen me and they're familiar with how I speak and who I am. So if you're not creating those videos or being more visible, you're not doing yourself justice.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, I feel the exact same way. I also already feel like I know you because I've watched a few of your videos now, and it's true. It creates sort of this emotional connection without ever even meeting a person, right? So again, you feel like you know them. And I think this is why, influencer marketing works so well, for instance, or anything like that. And I think what you're doing right now is you're teaching people to be their own influencers, right? And to really be their own work's biggest advocates in their own special way. All right. So just to follow up on that as well, what steps can they then take to make their presentations more influential and memorable in the long run?
If you're doing a presentation, the first thing that I encourage everyone to do is start at the end. What do you want people to walk away with? What do you want people to remember after they've left the room or they've closed the Zoom window? Very often, we pack too much information into our PowerPoint slides or into our presentations because we're so close to our area of expertise. You have the curse of knowledge where you know so much and you're so excited because you want to share everything you know. But guess what? If you do that, the audience is just going to be overwhelmed. If you have 10 key messages in there that you want them to remember, they're going to remember 0. If you have 3 key things you want them to walk away with, better still, if you have 1 key message that you want them to remember, and you build your whole presentation, your whole story around that, then you are increasing the chances of them understanding and remembering that key message. So starting at the end is step 1. And then getting into the presentation with the mindset of creating that dialogue, that conversation that we talked about. How do I make it so that I'm not just delivering information and educating people? Yes, people want to be educated, but not all the time and not nonstop for 30 or 45 minutes or an hour. There's a reason why we all hated being at school, or most of us, right? Because our teachers just did this information dump, this brain dump, and expected us to not just pay attention, but also remember everything and implement everything. It's impossible. I don't remember half the stuff I learned in history or geography at school. It's awful.
I don't remember any of it.
Right?
0.
And I feel dumb because I'm supposedly so educated, but half the stuff I learned, especially at school, I would say the higher educational institutions got slightly better at helping me retain the knowledge, but school was just awful because it was a one-way lecture. So understanding how you can go beyond education. How can you bring in some entertainment? Still linked to your topic, but how can you make it more entertaining? How can you make it inspiring? How can you make it engaging and interactive? Those elements are what are really gonna lift your presentation and bring it to that next level.
Absolutely. I just want to say on that whole, school thing as well, I might not remember everything that I was taught in school, but I certainly remember how that made me feel. And it just did not make me feel very good about myself because, again, you're bombarded with so much information and you're thinking to yourself, well, that went completely over my head. How am I supposed to retain any of this? And I think at the end of the day, what I just want to add to that is I think in a lot of cases, when you are giving a presentation or you are speaking to an audience of people, you want to leave them with a feeling, right? Am I right in saying
Yeah.
that? With a feeling after you've had a conversation with them.
Yeah. There's this very famous quote by, I'm going to forget who it is. The quote is, people will forget what you say, people will forget what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And it's so true.
100%. So in that case, speaking of like where you want to be at the end of your, or starting at the end from your presentation, right? Is it also right to say that I want the audience to walk away with this feeling and maybe starting from there as well?
Yeah, the feeling can go with the message for sure. And it should.
Okay.
And that's what you want people to really remember, to the extent of, I ask my clients this question: if someone who's attended your presentation is talking to their friend, what would you want them to say? Hey, yesterday I was in this great presentation by this person, and what? That, fill in the blank, and that's what you want to construct your whole presentation around.
Amazing. That's a really, really good tip. Nausheen, I just want to ask you some personal questions. Where did you actually learn all of this? Was this sort of like a logical thing that happened or something like that? I have to ask, how did this all come to be for you?
Speaking in public, speaking on stages, and speaking on camera was one of my passions in life. I just didn't turn it into a living. I didn't go into it full time till much later in life, till my late 30s. But throughout my life, I've been speaking on any stage that I can find. I've been on the radio, I've been on TV, I've even produced documentaries and films for Amazon Studios and CNN. So it's been a lifelong journey of learning by doing, but not really figuring out that I'm actually learning something that I'm going to apply later on. It was because I've just been in love with speaking live and speaking to an audience that I've just taken every opportunity I can, and also learned very, very slowly because of that, because I didn't go to school for it. I didn't have a teacher or a trainer. I just picked up things along the way that I saw work better than others. So I walked into a room, tried to deliver a joke, didn't work. Okay, I understood. How can I improve this next time? The next time I tried it, it worked a little better. The next time, a little bit better. I saw that people were bored at one point. Okay, how do I make sure that I engage them? Then when I see more faces nodding at me, more eyes looking up at me versus on their phones, and I realize, okay, great, something's working. I just have to figure out how to keep tweaking it, how to keep refining it. So it was a very long 17 or 18-year-old long process where I did it throughout my life, through different careers, and arrived at this moment where I realized that that was actually my calling in life.
Well, listen, Rome was not built in a day, and I don't think you get to where you are in life without having all of those lessons, right? Okay, so on a similar personal note, how would you say public speaking has really helped you or other leaders that you've coached even to build really strong networks and business relationships?
Speaking on stage, it automatically opens so many doors, especially if you're speaking on the right stages. So it opens doors for you in the moment where you are able to make an impact. If you deliver a great presentation that people really relate to, you're going to have people come up to you later. You're going to have people remember that presentation, and you can make contacts right there and then. So that's the immediate benefit. And then you can leverage those opportunities online, either in the form of taking straight up clips from what you've said and using them as videos, or using them to boost your credibility, saying that I've spoken on this stage, I've presented here, I've trained this team. And beyond that, it helps open up bigger and bigger doors. So TEDx is a great example where when you submit a pitch for TEDx, you have a space there in the app which says, what other stages have you spoken on? And that's where you can really show off that, yeah, I've been speaking on stage. I have all these podcasts and all these events that I've done. If you hadn't done them, potentially for some events, you have a lesser chance of getting in.
Mm.
So there's a lot of thought leadership that you can build. There's a lot of potential clients and contacts that you can network with, that you can find as a result of these speaking opportunities. And more than that, it helps you really emerge from the shadows. That's the biggest benefit that I've seen, where a lot of people just shy away from speaking on stage or speaking on camera because it's too complicated, takes too much time, might not be worth the effort, or they don't feel like they're up for it. But as soon as they can overcome that barrier, that first step, and take steps towards speaking on a stage, speaking on camera, being more visible, they realize they've started a journey that will only help boost their credibility and boost their brand in ways that they couldn't have imagined before.
Exactly. It's sort of like a snowball effect, right? Nausheen, I have to ask you this as well. We live in a world now with AI generated content. You kind of said that earlier about people using it to write script for them, and you can totally tell when people do that, of course. But I do wonder though, how can people or leaders integrate AI into their public speaking skills? Is there a way that they can do that where it's still authentic? What strategies can they employ to use AI to boost their brand's visibility and build deeper connections with their audience?
Yeah, I've seen AI work really well in two different ways. One is when you're brainstorming about something, when you're brainstorming about your keynote or a video script, use AI to help you brainstorm. Don't use it to actually write the script for you because it's going to be devoid of humanity and it's going to sound awful. But brainstorming with AI absolutely works. You don't get ideas in a void. You always get more ideas when you have someone else brainstorming with you. At least that's how I felt. So I use AI as a brainstorming partner at that initial stage. And another place where I've seen AI work really well is at the analysis stage. So there are AI tools that you can use that tell you how fast you're speaking, how many filler words you're using, what kind of eye contact you're making, or if you're not making eye contact, what kind of expressions you're using. And those kinds of analytics really help in enhancing that self-awareness. First after the fact, and then eventually in the moment. So you can catch yourself. If you've been monotonous for a while, you can stop. If you feel like you've been talking nonstop, you can pause. So AI works really well there. There's a tool that I use with my community, with my clients all the time. It's called Udly. And there are other tools as well. This is the one that I use. And I always have clients really get excited by this because they've never seen these analytics before. You don't normally know what's the word per minute speed at which you speak. You don't know how many pauses you use. You may not be even aware of some pet phrases or weak words that you might be using. So AI tools can really help you analyze that.
100%. I literally just wrote that down because I need to do that for sure. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, Nausheen, I also learned that not 28, it's 59% of hiring managers consider public speaking skills to be really important for job candidates. Now, of course, I think this indicates that strong public speaking can actually enhance, an individual's career prospects. So can you give us a few reasons of why that is? And how employees can really work on being more well-spoken to contribute to a business's growth?
There used to be a time where people thought that if you build it, they will come, or my work should speak for itself. Unfortunately, that is not true anymore because you have so many people doing great work. How do you stand out? How do you make sure that you get promoted and not person XYZ who is doing perhaps work that might be as good as yours? But how do you make sure that you stand out, not them? It is through being able to not just do the work, but also be able to advocate for yourself advocate for your ideas, express them on bigger and bigger platforms. I'll give you an example from one of my early days at Procter & Gamble. I was there as a junior manager, and one of the things I loved doing was public speaking, even at that age. And my managers knew this, and I got selected to go and present in another country to someone who was visiting from the US, from the headquarters, and they were pretty much like the second or the third in command globally of P&G. And only senior level managers were being flown out to present to this person. I was the junior most person who was there. And everyone else who was at my level was like, "What? Why are you going? What did you do?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to go and present to this person." So those kinds of opportunities open themselves up to you if you are working intentionally on your presentation skills, communication skills, and public speaking skills, because not everyone can go and express either their ideas or the success of a project or pitch something new in a way that is convincing and has impact. If you can teach yourself those skills, if you can work with a coach to enhance those skills, you are setting yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm. So Nausheen, what do you think companies, or what do you know rather, companies can do to really encourage their employees to be better speakers?
One of the ways is to, of course, give more opportunity to people of all levels to speak. Very often in companies, you find the same people speaking over and over, generally the C-suite, generally the senior managers. And that's where it becomes a huge leap, where someone gets promoted and they haven't been speaking, they haven't been visible for a lot of their career, and now suddenly they need to be visible. It comes as a shock. But if you can give people at every level opportunities to speak to a broader audience, you are encouraging people to first take that scary step, and then two, to then build the skill set that can support that kind of speaking. So just more opportunities is step one. And step two is, of course, to have regular trainings in the art of communication. Most companies will have maybe one generic communication skills training, or public speaking skills or presentation skills training. They'll do that one training once and be done with it. Very often those trainings are outdated, very formal, very stiff. They don't actually encourage people to find their true voice. They just have people go and replicate specific templates, which is really not the best way to help people find their true voice and really work on their speaking skills.
I think it's quite hard when, especially if you've never spoken a lot, especially in meetings or something like that, right? It's tough to speak out and all of that. And I think the hardest part of that is trying to, even as like a junior person in the company, trying to make your voice known and find that strength to actually do that, right? It's a terrifying step. But I think once you start doing it and you start taking up that space, if I can say it like that, it does get easier for sure.
Yeah, you get used to it, and you also then realize how important it is to build your skill set in something that you are going to be doing. One of the reasons why people don't work on their communication skills or presentation skills is because they don't feel like they have enough opportunity. But if they have the opportunity, then they're gonna work on it. They're gonna actually become better communicators because they know that this is something that I'm gonna have to do. I may as well do it well.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think in that case, like say for instance, a person wants to put themselves out there, right, on a video, or start to make videos and put them on LinkedIn or something like that. Do you think that finding their niche or the thing that they're super passionate about, even if it has something completely different to do with the career that they're currently in, but just something that they're passionate about again, for them to just talk about that? Or would you recommend that people actually speak about the things that they're currently already doing?
This is a great question because I often have clients who are in the corporate world, but they want to create thought leadership in something that is maybe adjacent or different from what they're actually doing in their day-to-day life. It's a dilemma. It's something that you have to figure out how it connects to your longer term plan. Understanding what you want to be known for is a great first step in developing your own voice. So a lot of people don't actually take that first step. They don't stop to think about, what is it that I want people to associate with me? You talked about Jason Pfeiffer at the beginning of the podcast, and Jason said that he actually went through this process himself, where he was promoted to editor-in-chief, and he realized that he wanted to have a public brand connected to himself and to an extent to his work, but he didn't know what to stand for. What was it that what should people remember? And he very intentionally chose a particular topic. He wanted to be known for change. And so everything that he did, all his speaking, all his thought leadership stuff was connected back to change. And he wanted to be known as the speaker that people want to bring in if they want to talk about change management, how to work with change, how to adapt to change. Not necessarily something that connects to his work at Entrepreneur Magazine, but something that connects to his personal brand.
Yeah.
But I do want to say everyone doesn't have that kind of power or privilege, because if you're reporting into someone, if you have a company that is, of course, where that's the way that you earn your living, you may or may not have the freedom to go and then build your personal brand in something completely different. So it depends on your circumstances. But doing that exercise and figuring out what do you want to stand for is always immensely helpful.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think a lot of companies these days are opening up their doors to their employees, sort of creating their own personal brand at this stage. And I actually think it's essential these days in the job market, to be honest with you. I think that if I take, for instance, someone like Lily Ray, right? I mean, she has a company that she works for. However, they've completely given her free reign to still be an influencer, an SEO influencer in her own rights. And I think a lot of companies are starting to realize the actual benefits of having your employees be not only advocates for themselves, but they actually end up being advocates for your business and your company as well. So I think there are definitely doors opening in that sector for sure. But yeah, again, you know, having the privilege and freedom to be able to discuss and talk about the things that might have absolutely nothing to do with the work that you do during the day is certainly something that I think a lot more people should be talking about, and where are the limitations there, right? Okay, so we're gonna start wrapping up quite soon. I only have like 2 more questions for you, and the first one being is, in the long term, Nausheen, what do you think the benefits of enhancing your personal brand is through public speaking?
It gets you from being invisible and, in a way, a nobody. And I say nobody with air quotes because, of course, you are somebody. Of course, you probably have a lifetime worth of work. But if you're not talking about it, if you're not developing your personal brand, if you're not going out there and being visible, then you are, by definition, invisible. Yeah. So it takes you from being invisible to a trusted authority, which can open so many doors for you. It can future-proof your career. It's just the way that you were speaking about earlier, that now companies actually hire employees that have some kind of presence that they can look up and say, oh yeah, this person seems to be an expert in this field. They've taken the time to become visible and establish their authority and credibility. So it future-proofs your career. It opens up doors for side hustles. There are so many people, you mentioned some, and we know countless others who are now tapping into multiple revenue streams and not just depending on their 9-to-5 job. That only happens if you're building your brand and when you're being intentional about speaking and being on podcasts and going on lives, creating those connections. And beyond the corporate world, as an entrepreneur, it grows your business exponentially. Now, if you want to do a product launch, if you want to sell a course, you have to go on camera. You have to create a VSL, a video sales letter. You have to do a masterclass. You have to do webinars. You might want to do live events and podcasts and Q&A sessions. If you're hiding, you are creating an obstacle for yourself. You're crippling yourself when you don't need to at all. It's something that is absolutely within your grasp. You just need to make sure that you get over any kind of nerves or blocks that you have and ensure that you are speaking with impact wherever you speak.
Exactly. Nausheen, if there was one thing you wish more people knew about public speaking and building confidence when speaking in public, what would that be?
Speaking in public is not about speaking behind big podiums or waiting to speak on a big stage. Speaking in public is literally speaking to any group of people. When you're in the next team meeting, you're speaking in public. When you're on a podcast and there's going to be people that are going to watch you or listen to you afterwards, you're speaking in public. So if you can think of speaking in public as a skill that you need to have, that you actually use every day or every week of your life, if not every day, that's what's going to help you enhance that skill and become so much better at showing up in every context, in every meeting, every presentation, every webinar, every podcast, every video.
I think that's a very good way of looking at it. Hey, I'm already doing it. I'm already speaking in public. Yeah, exactly. Nausheen, that is it for today from my side. Honestly, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. This has been super insightful. Honestly, thank you.
Awesome. I'm so glad that this was helpful. And if you have any questions or if people listening have any questions, you can look me up on speaking.coach. And that's where you'll find info on how I work and also lots of free resources.
And that's a wrap on our conversation with Nausheen Chen on learning to speak as a leader. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to stay updated with all our conversations with thought leaders on the DesignRush Podcast. If you're looking for an expert agency to partner with for your next project, be it in web design, branding, or anything else, be sure to check out the DesignRush Marketplace. Just visit designrush.com/marketplace and you'll find a carefully curated list of top agencies to help you take your next project off the ground. Again, I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.